Before the bombs fell and the world of Fallout was forever transformed, the United States of America and the broader world existed in a tense and fragile balance, a prelude to the devastation known as the Great War of 2077. And understanding this period is crucial to grasping the fabric of the wasteland. In the decades leading up to the war, global tensions were dominated by a prolonged conflict over dwindling natural resources, particularly fossil fuels and uranium, as nations raced to secure energy independence and technological supremacy, and the resulting arms race saw the proliferation of nuclear weapons to unprecedented levels, leaving humanity on a knife edge of mutual annihilation, a fact highlighted in Fallout 3 and Fallout 76 through scattered pre-war documents and holotapes. By the mid-21st century, the United States government had become increasingly authoritarian and corporatized, with powerful conglomerates like Vault-Tec and Robco Industries exerting enormous influence over both civilian life and military research, creating a culture in which consumerism, propaganda, and technological advancement were intertwined in ways that would later shape the post-apocalyptic society, as evidenced by the in-game histories of Megaton and the Capital Wasteland. Vault-Tec Corporation, a seemingly benevolent company specializing in the construction of underground shelters, began lobbying for the widespread creation of vaults, under the guise of protecting the populace from nuclear attack. But in reality, many of these vaults were designed for sociological experimentation, reflecting the pre-war obsession with data-driven control and manipulation, a fact that is central to the lore explored in Fallout 1, 2, and 3. Energy scarcity and environmental degradation had become critical issues in this era, with the world's oil reserves nearing exhaustion and coal, gas, and nuclear power being pursued as alternative solutions, leading to geopolitical conflicts and the militarization of energy production, which set the stage for the global escalation into nuclear conflict. Documents found throughout Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 76 illustrate the mounting anxiety of scientists, politicians, and civilians alike, as the possibility of a nuclear holocaust became increasingly imminent. In the United States, society was stratified and heavily surveilled, with pre-war culture dominated by a mixture of 1950 seconds nostalgia, hyper-capitalist ideology, and a relentless drive toward technological progress, resulting in the creation of products and infrastructure that would ironically persist in the post-war era as relics of a bygone civilization, from automated Mr. Handy robots to irradiated cars, all of which serve as both narrative and environmental storytelling devices within the games. Military development during this period focused intensely on advanced weaponry and defensive measures, including the testing of the Forced Evolutionary Virus (FEV) in Vault-Tec facilities, which would later lead to the creation of super mutants, and the construction of massive nuclear arsenals capable of annihilating entire cities in seconds, highlighting a duality of human ingenuity and hubris that defines much of the Fallout universe. Cultural documents and pre-war holotapes reveal that everyday life in this era was characterized by a strange juxtaposition of normalcy and impending doom. Families maintained suburban routines, and children played with toys themed around nuclear survival, and the government issued pamphlets and instructional videos promoting preparedness, while simultaneously engaging in secretive and ethically dubious experiments, a paradox that the Fallout series portrays with haunting clarity. Meanwhile, global instability was mirrored domestically by social unrest, rising crime, and the marginalization of those unable to adapt to rapidly changing technologies and economic conditions, conditions which contributed to the formation of vaults, evacuation protocols, and emergency government programs, including Project Safehouse, which would later feed directly into the Enclave's post-war ambitions. Finally, the cataclysmic event that would define the wasteland, the Great War of 2077, occurred with almost incomprehensible suddenness as the United States and China launched nuclear strikes in a global exchange that lasted mere hours, annihilating cities, governments, and entire populations, leaving only fragments of infrastructure and technology, some of which survived to become the artifacts, ruins, and scavenged treasures players encounter across the Fallout series. And this event cemented the transition from a world of pre-war society, politics, and culture into the brutal, irradiated, and chaotic wasteland that serves as the canvas for every story told in Fallout's canonical timeline. These 10 facts together provide not only a historical foundation for understanding the Fallout universe, but also illuminate the human behaviors, societal structures, and technological ambitions that made the world ripe for collapse, setting the stage for the survival, conflict, and storytelling that would define the wasteland for centuries to come. The vaults of the Fallout universe stand as both monuments to human ingenuity and chilling testaments to the ethical corruption of pre-war America, a paradox that defines much of the series' lore, for these underground shelters were conceived by Vault-Tec Corporation, ostensibly to protect citizens from the looming threat of nuclear annihilation, yet the vast majority were never intended to serve that purpose, instead functioning as elaborate sociological experiments designed to study human behavior under extreme conditions, a fact central to understanding the culture and scientific hubris of the pre-war era. The very first vaults were constructed in the 2050 seconds and 2060 seconds, with a focus on durability, self-sufficiency, and advanced life support systems, employing reinforced steel, automated environmental controls, and renewable energy sources such as solar arrays, hydroponic farms, and nuclear reactors to simulate a habitable underground environment in case of a global nuclear strike, demonstrating Vault-Tec's engineering prowess while masking its darker motives. One of the earliest and most infamous Vault-Tec projects involved the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV, which was secretly integrated into select Vault populations to observe its mutagenic effects on human subjects over extended periods, ultimately producing supermutants and creating a population of post-human test subjects as revealed in Fallout 1, Fallout 2, and Fallout 3, illustrating the lengths to which the company was willing to compromise ethical standards in the pursuit of scientific knowledge. The diversity of experiments conducted across the 122 known vaults highlights Vault-Tec's obsession with controlling variables in human behavior. Vault 11's societal experiment forced residents to select one person as a sacrificial leader to maintain survival. Vault 108 exposed its population to cloned inhabitants to study identity and social dynamics. Vault 92 subjected musicians to psychological conditioning, and Vault 87 became the epicenter of FEV research, with each project meticulously designed to observe human adaptability, stress responses, and social hierarchy under artificially imposed conditions, providing an unparalleled lens into pre-war scientific ambition gone awry. The physical and technological design of the vaults was a marvel of pre-war engineering, incorporating high-grade reinforced concrete, blast doors capable of withstanding multi-megaton explosions, automated defense turrets, environmental filtration systems, and advanced robotics such as Mr. Handy and Protectron units to maintain daily operations, which not only ensured long-term sustainability, but also preserved technological artifacts that would later become essential to survivors in the post-war era, as seen in the Capital Wasteland and Mojave Desert. Vault-Tec also employed an extensive system of monitoring and recording equipment within the vaults, including hidden cameras, microphones, and environmental sensors, allowing them to observe the subject's behavior in real time, a fact confirmed through pre-war terminals, holotapes, and in-game lore, which underscores the company's role as a shadowy overseer of human life and a forerunner of the ethical dilemmas explored throughout the series. Certain vaults were deliberately left incomplete or failed to examine the consequences of poor planning and resource scarcity on human behavior. For example, Vault 12's faulty door design ensured radiation would leak in over time, creating ghouls and testing long-term survival under exposure to hazardous environments, while Vault 13 was equipped with a strict 200-year water ration system that formed the central challenge for the Lone Wanderer's predecessor, demonstrating how environmental manipulation was used as a controlled variable in these social experiments. Beyond the experimental vaults, a handful were designed for practical survival, such as Vault 101, which maintained strict population control and environmental stability to study long-term societal isolation, and Vault 77, which included hidden observation chambers to monitor psychological stress, revealing that even ostensibly safe vaults were imbued with an element of human experimentation, reflecting Vault-Tec's pervasive ideology that knowledge gained through manipulation outweighed moral considerations. Vaults also played a key role in post-war geopolitics and power structures, as surviving inhabitants often became influential in shaping emerging societies, with the Lone Wanderer emerging from Vault 101 to confront the Enclave, the Chosen One from Vault 13 to restore their community, and Vault dwellers from other regions contributing to factional development, demonstrating that Vault-Tec's experiments had unintended consequences far beyond their intended scope. Finally, the legacy of the vaults extends to their cultural and narrative impact, with each location serving as a repository of pre-war culture, technology, and morality. Their intricate designs, hidden agendas, and historical significance, providing players with a lens into the ethical and scientific mindset of a civilization on the brink of self-destruction, and the recurring presence of vaults throughout Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76 cements their role as both literal and symbolic shelters of humanity's triumphs and failings, making the study of Vault-Tec an essential cornerstone in understanding the interplay between science, power, and human survival in the Fallout universe. In the chaotic aftermath of the Great War, as the world struggled to recover from the nuclear devastation of 2077, various factions emerged across the wasteland, each shaped by survival imperatives, ideological ambitions, and the remnants of pre-war power. And understanding these factions is critical to comprehending the socio-political landscape of the Fallout universe. Among the earliest and most influential was the Brotherhood of Steel, founded by remnants of the United States military in California, who adopted a quasi-religious reverence for pre-war technology, believing it must be preserved and controlled to prevent humanity from repeating the catastrophic mistakes of the past. The Brotherhood's strict hierarchy, codified in their founding principles and oath-bound leadership, allowed them to maintain order in scattered enclaves, expand into the Capital Wasteland, and later into Appalachia, while remaining dogmatically focused on hoarding advanced technology such as power armor, energy weapons, and computer systems, illustrating a tension between their protective and authoritarian tendencies. The Enclave, another major faction, represented the continuation of the pre-war U.S. government, operating in secret bunkers and command centers to assert control over post-apocalyptic America, enforcing a philosophy of genetic purity that led to genocidal policies against ghouls, mutants, and other unworthy populations. Their development of advanced robotics, FEV-based supermutants, and nuclear-capable infrastructure positioned them as a shadow government whose influence extended across the wasteland, notably shaping events in Fallout 2, Fallout 3, and Fallout 76, and serving as a direct ideological antagonist to other human-centric factions. In contrast, the New California Republic, or NCR, arose as a democratic and expansionist society dedicated to restoring pre-war ideals of governance, law, and trade, beginning as a small regional government before expanding across the Mojave Wasteland and beyond, with a focus on agricultural development, civic institutions, and military organization. Their bureaucratic structure and emphasis on law and order provided stability, but also made them vulnerable to corruption and political inefficiency, factors that Caesar's Legion exploited during the Mojave campaigns, illustrating the complexity of rebuilding civilization in a lawless environment. Caesar's Legion itself represented a starkly different approach, founded by Edward Sallow, known as Caesar, who sought to recreate a militarized, autocratic society modeled on ancient Rome, emphasizing absolute authority, strict social hierarchy, and brutal enforcement of laws, including slavery and ritual combat, and their disciplined military structure allowed them to dominate large swaths of the wasteland in the Mojave, directly challenging both NCR expansion and independent settlements, and demonstrating the extremes to which human ideology can adapt in a post-apocalyptic context. Other notable factions include the Railroad, a secretive group dedicated to the protection and liberation of synths, whose sophisticated espionage networks, covert operations, and moral philosophy in the capital wasteland highlight the evolving ethical dilemmas surrounding artificial intelligence and post-human rights. Their existence underscores the consequences of pre-war technological advancements, such as synth creation by the Institute, and reflects broader societal debates about identity, freedom, and the definition of humanity. The Minutemen, a citizen militia in the Commonwealth, emerged as a decentralized faction devoted to community defense and local autonomy, relying on volunteer forces and grassroots leadership, and their revival under the lone survivor demonstrates the capacity for ordinary citizens to organize effectively in response to threats, offering a counterpoint to more authoritarian factions like the Enclave or Caesar's Legion, and emphasizing the enduring importance of civic responsibility and collective action in the wasteland. Raiders and tribal collectives, though less structured, represent another critical facet of post-war factionalism, evolving from opportunistic survival groups into semi-permanent power structures in regions such as the Capital Wasteland, Mojave Desert, Appalachia, and the Pit. Their reliance on violence, intimidation, and scavenging illustrates the anarchic elements of wasteland society and provides a foil to the organized factions, highlighting the spectrum of human adaptation in a devastated world. The Children of Atom, a religiously motivated faction worshipping radiation as divine, emerged in multiple locations including the Glow and the Capital Wasteland, blending faith, superstition, and environmental mutation into a unique socio-political entity. Their devotion to nuclear phenomena exemplifies the fusion of ideology and circumstance in post-apocalyptic survival, influencing both local populations and broader interfactional dynamics. The Institute, a highly secretive and technologically advanced faction in the Commonwealth, specialized in synthetic humans, robotics, and advanced scientific research, operating underground to influence surface affairs through subterfuge, political manipulation, and synth deployment. Their emergence demonstrates the enduring relevance of pre-war technological knowledge in shaping post-war society, and their ideological conflict with the railroad, Brotherhood of Steel, and surface settlements reflects ongoing tensions between technological control and human autonomy. Finally, factional interactions across the wasteland, including alliances, conflicts, and territorial disputes, form a complex web of socio-political dynamics that define the post-war world, shaping trade, law, warfare, and survival. The interplay between groups such as NCR, Caesar's Legion, the Brotherhood, the Enclave, and local militias illustrates that the rise of major factions was not only a response to the destruction of the Great War, but also a reflection of enduring human ambition, ideology, and adaptability, setting the stage for the multifaceted narratives explored across Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76, and providing a foundation for understanding how civilization rebuilds, fractures, and evolves amid the ruins of pre-war America. The wasteland of the Fallout universe is defined not only by its factions and people, but also by the iconic cities and locations that survived, adapted, or emerged from the ruins of the pre-war world, each serving as a testament to humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and capacity for both civilization and chaos. With sites such as Megaton, located in the capital wasteland, representing a microcosm of post-apocalyptic society where a massive, unexploded atomic bomb serves as both a literal and symbolic center of community life, highlighting the precarious balance between survival and annihilation. In contrast, Rivet City, a floating settlement constructed atop the remains of an aircraft carrier, demonstrates adaptive ingenuity, housing refugees, traders, and scientists in an environment where maritime engineering meets pre-war industrial salvage, providing critical context for the Commonwealth's maritime trade and the survival of technological knowledge. Vault City, though nominally a vault, evolved into a highly advanced and socially stratified urban center with rigorous laws, advanced healthcare, and a focus on maintaining purity and technological dominance, illustrating how some vault dwellers transitioned into fully functional urban societies, influencing neighboring regions and demonstrating the socio-political ramifications of Vault-Tec's experiments beyond their intended design. The Pit, situated in the ruins of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, exemplifies industrial post-apocalyptic adaptation, where enslaved and liberated populations alike utilize remaining machinery to forge a functional yet brutal society, with its smelting operations and organized labor hierarchy providing insight into human resourcefulness and the enduring appeal of industrial power structures, as depicted in Fallout 3's add-on content. New Vegas, perched upon the ruins of Las Vegas, stands as one of the most vividly preserved pre-war urban centers. Its neon lights, casinos, and controlled hydroponic agriculture, forming a unique blend of pre-war culture, authoritarian rule, and anarchic opportunism. Under Mr. House's meticulous governance, The city became a hub for trade, gambling, and political intrigue, demonstrating how pre-war infrastructure can be leveraged to create post-apocalyptic stability and spectacle simultaneously, while remaining vulnerable to external threats such as Caesar's Legion and the NCR. The Mojave Outpost and Camp McCarran, though smaller, served as critical military and trade centers within the Mojave wasteland, facilitating the expansion of the NCR and establishing defensive positions against raiders and hostile factions, illustrating how strategic settlements evolved from pre-war roads, military infrastructure, and water sources, providing critical insight into the geography-driven nature of post-war urbanization. In Appalachia, Fallout 76 presents locations such as Vault 76 itself, and settlements like Flatwoods and Charleston, which reveal the slow process of rebuilding in the early post-war years, highlighting issues of governance, security, and technological reliance as populations emerge from the controlled environment of Vault 76 to confront the unpredictable hazards of the irradiated landscape, including mutated fauna, environmental hazards, and competing groups. Diamond City, built within the remains of Fenway Park in Boston, serves as a prime example of adaptive reuse, transforming a pre-war sporting venue into a fortified urban settlement, where trade, law, and community governance coalesce around the preservation of cultural memory and the maintenance of security, reflecting the broader human tendency to anchor civilization to familiar landmarks, even in the aftermath of global catastrophe. The glowing sea, though largely uninhabited due to extreme radiation, is nonetheless a focal point for exploration, resource scavenging, and factional conflict, emphasizing the environmental extremes that define the post-war landscape and the adaptive strategies necessary for human survival, while also housing remnants of pre-war scientific endeavors, such as advanced laboratories and lost military installations, which connect the wasteland to its nuclear past. Finally, the ruins of pre-war metropolises such as Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and New Reno serve as enduring reminders of the societal collapse that followed the Great War, their remains providing both danger and opportunity, fostering trade hubs, criminal enterprises, and political power struggles, and illustrating that in Fallout's universe, cities are not merely physical locations but living, evolving entities shaped by human ingenuity, ideology, and circumstance. Their stories chronicling the intersection of history, culture, and survival in a world where the past is omnipresent and the future is perpetually uncertain, forming the stage upon which all other post-war narratives and factional dynamics unfold. The technological landscape of pre-war America and the wider world played a decisive role in shaping both the society that existed before 2077 and the post-apocalyptic environment of the Fallout universe, with weaponry, robotics, and energy systems reflecting the duality of human innovation and destructive potential, and understanding these technologies is essential to comprehending the challenges faced by survivors across the wasteland. Energy weapons, for instance, were developed as advanced alternatives to conventional firearms, including laser rifles, plasma pistols, and the experimental Gauss rifles, representing a culmination of pre-war research into directed energy technology, miniaturized power cells, and precision targeting systems. And these weapons continued to influence combat strategies and factional dominance long after the Great War, as seen in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and Fallout 76. Conventional firearms also evolved significantly prior to the war, with assault rifles, sniper rifles, pistols, and shotguns benefiting from improvements in metallurgy, ammunition design, and manufacturing efficiency, allowing for the mass arming of both civilian militias and formal military forces, and contributing to the proliferation of small arms that would later define the armament of wasteland raiders, mercenaries, and organized factions alike. Power armor, perhaps the most iconic technological achievement of the pre-war era, was developed by the United States military in collaboration with private contractors such as Vault-Tec, creating fully enclosed exoskeletal suits that combined ballistic protection, environmental shielding, and enhanced strength for soldiers. Variants such as T-45, T-51B, and experimental T-60 models became symbols of authority, military might, and technological supremacy, with surviving suits preserved by the Brotherhood of Steel, scavenged by adventurers, and deployed in critical conflicts across the wasteland. Robotics formed another pillar of pre-war technological development, with companies like Robco Industries producing domestic and industrial automatons such as Mr. Handy, Protectrons, and SentryBots, designed for household maintenance, security, and military applications, demonstrating the pre-war ambition to integrate artificial intelligence and automation into daily life, while also creating challenges when such machines malfunctioned or were repurposed in the post-war era. The United States government and private companies also invested heavily in nuclear technology, not only as weapons, but as civilian energy sources, exemplified by fusion cores and miniature nuclear reactors that powered both urban infrastructure and pre-war vehicles, highlighting the interconnected nature of military, industrial, and civilian technological advancement, and providing a tangible source of energy for post-war factions, scavengers, and survivalists. Communications technology, including pre-war radios, satellites, and encrypted networks, enabled both government oversight and public information dissemination, yet these systems also became critical assets in the post-apocalyptic world, as factions like the Brotherhood, the NCR, and the Enclave repurposed existing transmitters, satellites, and radio towers to coordinate military operations, propagate propaganda, and maintain remote control over automated defenses. Vehicles, ranging from armored personnel carriers to civilian cars and motorcycles, were adapted to pre-war engineering standards, often powered by gasoline, fusion, or electric energy sources, and their presence in the wasteland underscores the ingenuity required to repurpose and maintain mechanical systems in a post-nuclear environment, where fuel scarcity and radiation hazards posed significant challenges. Advanced scientific projects, including the Forced Evolutionary Virus Program and the development of experimental superweapons such as Liberty Prime, demonstrate the intersection of technology, military ambition, and ideological objectives, illustrating that pre-war research was not only about improving quality of life, but also about asserting global dominance, with consequences that reverberated long after the Great War, particularly in Fallout 3 and Fallout 76. Medical technology, ranging from advanced synthetic blood, stim packs, and surgical robots to radiation-resistant pharmaceuticals, played a crucial role in pre-war healthcare infrastructure, highlighting both the potential for life-saving innovation and the ethical dilemmas inherent in experimenting with biotechnology under militarized oversight, and these technologies directly influenced survival rates, combat effectiveness, and population recovery in the post-war environment. Finally, pre-war infrastructure incorporated environmental control technologies such as air filtration systems, water purification plants, and waste recycling mechanisms, which, while often taken for granted at the time, became invaluable to post-war survivors attempting to restore civilization, demonstrating that technological sophistication extended beyond weapons to include life-sustaining systems, and emphasizing that in the Fallout universe, the ingenuity, ambition, and hubris of pre-war humanity left a legacy of tools, weapons, and machines that shaped both the immediate aftermath of the Great War and the enduring narrative of survival, conflict, and reconstruction across all regions explored in Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76. The irradiated wasteland of Fallout is populated not only by human survivors, but also by a vast array of mutated creatures, many of which arose as direct consequences of the Great War, environmental radiation, and pre-war scientific experimentation, with these mutations serving as both ecological adaptations and narrative devices that underscore the consequences of unchecked technological and military ambition. And understanding these phenomena is crucial to grasping the biological diversity and hazards of the post-apocalyptic world. Among the most infamous are supermutants, whose origin traces back to the forced evolutionary virus (FEV) projects conducted in Vault-87 and other West-Tec facilities, where human test subjects were exposed to a highly mutagenic viral strain designed to increase strength, resilience, and longevity, ultimately producing hulking, genetically altered beings whose intellect varies according to experimental conditions, with notable examples including the Master's Army of Mutants in Fallout 1 and the various supermutant factions encountered in Fallout 3 and Fallout 76. Ghouls represent another significant mutation category, with humans exposed to high levels of radiation undergoing extreme physiological transformations that result in necrotic skin, slowed aging, and, in some cases, severe psychological effects. Ghouls can be feral, as seen in the Glowing Sea and the Capital Wasteland, or non-feral, maintaining social structures and cultural practices despite their mutation, exemplified by communities like Goodneighbor in Fallout 4. Highlighting the diverse ways humanity adapts to post-war radiation. Deathclaws, one of the most dangerous creatures encountered by survivors, are the product of pre-war genetic engineering programs designed to create ultimate military predators, combining attributes from dinosaurs and other apex predators to produce unparalleled strength, speed, and resilience. And their proliferation in irradiated regions such as the Mojave, Capital Wasteland, and Appalachia demonstrates how human experiments can have long-lasting ecological consequences. Radscorpions, giant irradiated arthropods, evolved as a result of widespread nuclear fallout, thriving in contaminated soil and scarce water sources, and their aggressive behavior and venomous stingers made them formidable predators, creating significant environmental hazards, while also serving as essential study subjects for survivalists and factions seeking to understand radiation-driven evolution. Miralurks, mutated crustaceans, adapted to coastal and riverine ecosystems, exhibit heavily armored exoskeletons, heightened aggression, and amphibious capabilities, providing both ecological balance and existential threat to human settlements along contaminated shorelines. While their presence in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 76 underscores the adaptability of fauna to extreme radiation, radstags, Brahmin, and other mutated herbivores illustrate the indirect effects of environmental radiation on the food chain, with altered physiology, resistance to radiation, and sometimes increased aggression, impacting local ecosystems, agricultural practices, and the survival strategies of wasteland communities, emphasizing that mutation is not limited to aggressive predators. Feral dogs and coyotes, often infected with minor radiation-induced changes, serve as both scavengers and threats to early human settlements, demonstrating how familiar species can evolve under extreme stresses, providing both a food source and a hazard, and reflecting the broader theme of ecological resilience amid human collapse. Plants and fungi in irradiated zones also exhibit mutations, with species like glowing mushrooms and irradiated flora offering both environmental hazards and potential resources for medicine, sustenance, and crafting, illustrating the pervasive impact of radiation on all levels of the biosphere, and contributing to the unique ecosystem challenges faced by survivors in regions like the Glowing Sea and Appalachia. Pre-war military and scientific efforts to weaponize mutated creatures, exemplified by experiments on FEV-mutated animals, robotic integration with fauna, and genetic crossbreeding projects, demonstrate the persistent drive to exploit mutation for strategic purposes, often resulting in unforeseen dangers that persisted into the post-war period and influenced factional conflicts, especially in the capital wasteland and Mojave Desert. Finally, the interaction between mutated creatures and human survivors defines much of the gameplay and narrative tension in the Fallout universe, as communities develop strategies for defense, hunting, and coexistence. Factions, like the NCR and Brotherhood of Steel, implement containment or eradication protocols, and adventurers must navigate territories shaped by the dual forces of nature and nuclear catastrophe, collectively illustrating that mutation in Fallout is not merely biological, but deeply intertwined with the ethical, technological, and social dimensions of post-apocalyptic survival, creating a living, evolving ecosystem that is both dangerous and narratively rich across Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76. Among the most enigmatic and dangerous factions to emerge in the aftermath of the Great War is the Enclave, the direct continuation of the pre-war United States government, whose clandestine operations, ideological extremism, and technological superiority positioned them as a shadow government, intent on controlling the remnants of the American populace, and understanding their origins and methods is essential to grasping the darker aspects of post-apocalyptic political power. Initially composed of high-ranking military officers, politicians, scientists, and bureaucrats who survived in secure offshore oil rigs and hidden bunkers, the Enclave maintained a vision of a purified America, aiming to exterminate or enslave populations deemed genetically impure, including ghouls, mutants, and other irradiated survivors, a plan facilitated by pre-war research into genetics, synthetic humans, and bioweapons such as the forced evolutionary virus, which they deployed to create super mutants and exert control over selected wasteland populations, as seen in Fallout 2 and Fallout 3. Their technological prowess was unparalleled, encompassing advanced power armor, vertibirds, automated sentry bots, and nuclear-capable infrastructure, allowing them to enforce their ideology through both military might and scientific dominance, with Liberty Prime emerging as the most iconic symbol of their military-industrial power, programmed to destroy enemies of the Enclave and deliver ideological propaganda to survivors. The Enclave's shadow government operated through secrecy and subterfuge, manipulating settlements, infiltrating factions, and controlling resources from behind the scenes, including water purification plants, and pre-war databases, demonstrating the continuity of pre-war bureaucratic systems into a post-apocalyptic context and their capacity to exert influence without overt visibility, as documented in terminals, holotapes, and environmental storytelling throughout Fallout 2, 3, and 76. Leadership within the Enclave was centralized, yet rigidly hierarchical, with the President and key officers issuing directives executed by specialized divisions, illustrating a militarized technocracy where obedience and operational secrecy were paramount, and dissent was met with swift punishment, reflecting the totalitarian impulses carried over from pre-war governmental structures. Their ideological doctrine emphasized racial and genetic purity, the restoration of pre-war American supremacy, and the elimination of what they considered societal contaminants, creating moral and political conflict with other factions, such as the NCR, Brotherhood of Steel, and independent wasteland communities, whose existence challenged the Enclave's vision of centralized control and total domination. Pre-war research facilities, including Poseidon Oil Rig, Adams Air Force Base, and Raven Rock, became central to Enclave operations, housing advanced laboratories, robotics production lines, and strategic command centers, demonstrating the faction's dependence on pre-war infrastructure and knowledge to maintain both influence and operational effectiveness in a fragmented wasteland. The Enclave's interactions with supermutants, androids, and technological artifacts reveal a consistent focus on leveraging science to achieve authoritarian ends, as seen in their attempts to control or eliminate rival factions through engineered bioweapons, robotics, and environmental manipulation, underscoring a broader theme in Fallout of the ethical dangers inherent in unrestrained technological application. Despite being largely isolated, the Enclave's long-term strategies included attempts to reclaim territory, manipulate regional politics, and subvert emergent governments, exemplified by campaigns against the NCR in New California, infiltration of the capital wasteland, and covert operations in Appalachia, illustrating that their vision extended far beyond mere survival to encompass ideological conquest and the restoration of pre-war hierarchy. Finally, the Enclave's legacy persists not only through surviving technological artifacts, military doctrine, and genetic experiments, but also through the ethical and narrative challenges they present to protagonists and wasteland societies, embodying the consequences of authoritarian governance, unchecked scientific experimentation, and the enduring human desire for control, making them a central component of Fallout's exploration of post-apocalyptic politics, morality, and survival across Fallout 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76, and ensuring that their shadow continues to loom over every faction, settlement, and survivor, navigating the irradiated landscape. In the aftermath of the Great War, the collapse of centralized governments and the destruction of infrastructure gave rise to a wide spectrum of human societies in the wasteland, ranging from organized communities to lawless raider gangs. And understanding these groups is essential for appreciating the social dynamics and survival strategies that define Fallout's post-apocalyptic world. Raiders, perhaps the most infamous of these emergent societies, are typically violent, opportunistic collectives that thrive on scavenging, extortion, and terrorizing less organized populations, with groups such as the Fiends in the Mojave, the Tunnelers in Appalachia, and the Raiders of the Capital Wasteland demonstrating the diversity of raider behavior, territoriality, and organizational structure, often evolving from scavenger bands into semi-permanent factions with internal hierarchies. rules, and economies. Tribal societies, by contrast, often arose in regions where isolated communities could maintain continuity with pre-war cultural or familial structures, adapting these traditions to survive in a hostile environment, as seen with the followers of the apocalypse's influence on education and medicine, or the more violent tribal collectives, such as the NCR-aligned indigenous groups and Mojave Desert tribes, who incorporate both ancestral knowledge and scavenged technology into their daily lives, highlighting the adaptive ingenuity of human societies in post-war conditions. Settlements like Megaton, Goodneighbor, and Tenpenny Tower in the capital Wasteland, or Prim and Novak in the Mojave, illustrate how communities could arise from former urban ruins, fortifying buildings, scavenging resources, and establishing rudimentary governance structures, demonstrating a balance between survival, commerce, and social cohesion, while remaining vulnerable to external threats from raiders, mutants, and environmental hazards. Many post-war societies relied heavily on scavenged technology for daily life, including water purification systems, generators, salvaged vehicles, and weaponry, highlighting the dependence on pre-war infrastructure and the ability to repurpose remnants of civilization to ensure community survival, as evidenced by settlements in Appalachia and the capital Wasteland, where power grids, radios, and protective barricades are often assembled from scavenged parts. Raiders and tribes frequently developed unique cultural norms, often violent or ritualized, including initiation ceremonies, territorial marking, and codified leadership structures, reflecting the human tendency to create social order even within chaotic or brutal frameworks, as seen in Caesar's legion-inspired groups, or the improvised governance among tunnelers and fiends. Some post-war societies arose around specific resources, such as water, fuel, or arable land, which determined the size, stability, and territorial conflicts of these communities, exemplified by settlements like Shady Sands, which became the nucleus of the new California Republic, and Vault City, which evolved from a Vault dwellers' enclave into a technologically advanced city-state, illustrating the intersection of resource control, population management, and societal development. Trade networks emerged between settlements, raider camps, and tribal communities, facilitating the exchange of goods, information, and protection, with caravans and traveling merchants playing a key role in connecting otherwise isolated populations, a theme central to Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 76, where inter-settlement economics shape both conflict and cooperation across the wasteland. Adaptation to environmental hazards, including radiation, mutated fauna, and scarce food and water, influenced the structure and survival strategies of these societies, with fortified settlements, underground shelters, and defensive patrols becoming commonplace, while nomadic groups often relied on stealth, speed, mobility to survive, demonstrating the diverse ways human ingenuity manifests under extreme pressure. Social stratification often arose even in these rudimentary societies, with leadership roles, specialized labor, and enforcement positions, creating hierarchies that mirrored pre-war governmental structures in microcosm, and conflicts between leaders and subordinates could lead to fragmentation or reformation, a phenomenon observable in both raider gangs and tribal communities throughout the series. Finally, the interaction between raiders, tribes, and more structured societies highlights the ongoing tension between anarchy and order in the post-war world, as communities negotiate survival, morality, and governance in the absence of central authority, and these dynamics provide narrative depth, challenge, and ethical complexity for players navigating the wasteland in Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76, illustrating that post-war human societies are not monolithic, but adaptive, diverse, and deeply reflective of both pre-war legacies and the enduring human instinct to survive against overwhelming odds. In the irradiated and fractured world of the Fallout universe, religion, cults, and ideological movements emerged as powerful forces shaping human behavior, governance, and survival, reflecting both a search for meaning in a devastated landscape and the human tendency to organize communities around shared beliefs. And understanding these groups is crucial to comprehending the social and moral complexity of the wasteland. Among the most notable is the Children of Atom, a religion that venerates radiation as a divine force, with followers inhabiting regions such as the Glow, the Capital Wasteland, and Appalachia, embracing exposure to irradiated zones as spiritual communion, and often attempting to spread their doctrine to other settlements, illustrating how belief systems can arise directly from environmental conditions and scientific catastrophe. The Hubologists, while less prominent in the main series, represent a continuation of pre-war religious experimentation and cult-like behavior, with an emphasis on salvation, hierarchical control, and manipulation of technology to enforce ideological objectives, demonstrating the persistence of pre-war organizational patterns in post-war societies. Certain factions, such as Caesar's Legion, while primarily political and military, also incorporate ideological and quasi-religious elements into their governance, with ritualized combat, deification of Caesar, and ceremonial punishments blending governance with spiritual devotion, illustrating how ideology can serve as a tool of social cohesion and control in the absence of traditional state structures. The followers of the apocalypse, in stark contrast, promote a humanitarian and secular ideology, emphasizing education, medicine, and preservation of knowledge, advocating for cooperation between settlements and factions to ensure long-term survival, highlighting the diversity of ideological responses to the same catastrophic events and the moral choices faced by wasteland survivors. The Children of Atom, Brotherhood of Steel, and Enclave each represent differing approaches to the preservation or control of knowledge, technology, and human life, with ideological underpinnings shaping decisions about whom to protect, whom to subjugate, and whom to eliminate, reflecting the intersection of belief systems with practical survival strategies, as seen in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and Fallout 76. Superstitions, urban legends, and localized cults proliferated in areas with high radiation, mutated wildlife, or scarce resources, with communities attributing moral, spiritual, or mystical significance to environmental hazards, as illustrated by settlements in Appalachia, the Glowing Sea, and the Mojave, demonstrating the human inclination to impose narrative meaning onto a chaotic world. Ideologies surrounding racial purity, genetic control, and social hierarchy, most prominently exemplified by the Enclave and, to a lesser extent, Caesar's Legion, illustrate how belief systems can justify extreme policies, including genocide, slavery, and eugenics, highlighting ethical dilemmas that persist across post-war governance and interfactional conflicts, and providing context for player choices in interactions with these factions. In addition, some cults emerged as survival mechanisms, offering community, protection, and resources in exchange for adherence to strict codes of conduct. with rituals, taboos, and ceremonies serving both as spiritual expression and practical social enforcement, creating tightly knit societies that could withstand external threats despite moral or ethical controversies, exemplified by children of atom compounds and certain tribal enclaves. Propaganda and ideological indoctrination were also critical tools in spreading belief systems, with factions distributing holotapes, murals, lectures, and public rituals to enforce loyalty and obedience, whether to the NCR's democratic ideals, Caesar's autocratic vision, or enclave genetic purity doctrines, demonstrating that ideology in the wasteland often functions as both moral compass and instrument of power. Finally, the coexistence, competition, and conflict between religious groups, ideological factions, and cults contribute to the complex moral and narrative landscape of the Fallout universe, influencing settlement politics, factional alliances, and player decision-making, illustrating that belief and ideology are as central to survival and societal organization in the post-apocalyptic world as weapons, technology, and territory, and that across Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 76, the interplay between faith, philosophy, and pragmatism shapes both human behavior and the overarching story of civilization's resilience, adaptation, and moral struggle in the irradiated wasteland. Across the irradiated expanses of the Fallout universe, certain individuals have emerged as pivotal figures whose actions, decisions, and legacies shaped the course of post-war history, and understanding these notable characters is essential for grasping both the narrative and moral dimensions of the wasteland. The Vault Dweller of Fallout 1, originating from Vault 13, embarked on a mission to save their community from ecological collapse and the rising threat of supermutants, navigating moral dilemmas and factional conflicts that would determine the fate of the Western Wasteland and lay the foundations for future governance, illustrating the consequences of individual agency in a fractured world. In Fallout 2, the Chosen One, a direct descendant of the Vault Dweller, continued this legacy, confronting the Enclave, restoring the new California Republic's stability, and negotiating complex interactions with tribal and mutated societies, highlighting both generational continuity and the enduring importance of leadership and personal ethics in shaping post-war civilization. Fallout 3 introduces the Lone Wanderer, a Vault 101 survivor who navigates the capital wasteland, confronting the Enclave's genocidal ambitions, interacting with factions such as the Brotherhood of Steel, and making choices that influence the survival and moral direction of entire settlements, emphasizing the centrality of player-driven narrative in exploring heroism and consequence. The Courier, protagonist of Fallout New Vegas, survives an assassination attempt to traverse the Mojave Wasteland, ultimately influencing the power struggle between NCR, Caesar's Legion, Mr. House, and independent settlements, with decisions affecting political control, trade, and survival, reflecting the complex interplay of diplomacy, strategy, and morality inherent in post-apocalyptic leadership. In Fallout 4, the sole survivor emerges from Vault 111 to navigate the Commonwealth, confront the Institute, liberate or control synth populations, and influence factions such as the Brotherhood of Steel, Railroad, and Minutemen, highlighting the tension between personal vengeance, ethical responsibility, and societal reconstruction in a highly contested environment. Certain non-player characters, such as Three Dog in Fallout 3, Rex in Fallout 2, and Elder Maxon in Fallout 4, play critical roles, as mentors, leaders, or cultural icons, guiding survivors, shaping public opinion, and reinforcing factional ideologies, demonstrating the significance of influential figures beyond player agency. Key villains, including the Master, Caesar, and Father, serve as ideological and tactical counterpoints to heroes, embodying extreme visions of post-war society, ethical transgression, and the dangers of unchecked ambition, providing narrative depth and moral contrast that contextualizes the heroism of protagonists, while illustrating the stakes of the wasteland's socio-political landscape. Legendary wasteland explorers such as John Henry Eden, Mr. House, and Harold illustrate alternative approaches to leadership, often blending technological superiority, charisma, and survivalist strategies to maintain influence over populations, settlements, or regions, and demonstrate that heroism and notoriety can be defined as much by intellect and planning as by combat prowess. Survivalists and mercenary figures, including Boone, Veronica, and Dogmeat, contribute to both narrative and tactical outcomes, embodying loyalty, resourcefulness, and moral ambiguity, and providing nuanced perspectives on companionship, ethics, and strategic alliances in a fractured post-war society. Finally, the enduring legacies of these characters, both player-controlled and non-player, resonate across generations, influencing political structures, factional development, cultural memory, and ethical frameworks throughout the wasteland, ensuring that the stories of individual courage, moral choice, and leadership are inseparable from the broader historical, social, and environmental contexts of Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, 4, and 76, and that the heroism and notoriety of these figures provide both narrative cohesion and moral exploration for players navigating the irradiated, morally complex, and ever-evolving post-apocalyptic world. The Mojave Wasteland, as depicted in Fallout New Vegas, serves as a crucible for the interplay of competing political ideologies, military power, and regional survival strategies, with the New California Republic (NCR) and Caesar's Legion emerging as two of the most influential factions, whose actions shaped the fate of the Mojave and its inhabitants, highlighting the complexity of post-war governance and diplomacy. The NCR, a democratic, expansionist society rooted in pre-war ideals, sought to establish order, law, and trade throughout the Mojave, relying on a structured military, bureaucratic administration, and strategic settlement networks to assert its influence, while simultaneously struggling with corruption, overstretched resources, and factional dissent, illustrating the inherent tension between idealism and practical governance in post-apocalyptic societies. Caesar's Legion, founded by Edward Sallow, known as Caesar, adopted a militaristic and autocratic structure inspired by the Roman Empire, emphasizing conquest, slavery, ritualized combat, and the absolute authority of its leader, with an ideology that valorized discipline, obedience, and expansion at the expense of individual freedom, contrasting sharply with the NCR's democratic principles and serving as both a political and moral foil within the Mojave. The Mojave Wasteland itself presents a complex geopolitical landscape where settlements, trade routes, and natural resources serve as both strategic assets and sources of conflict, with locations such as New Vegas, Nipton, and the Hoover Dam acting as pivotal centers of power, commerce, and military importance, shaping factional strategies and influencing the balance of power in the region. The Hoover Dam, in particular, functions as both a literal and symbolic prize, providing hydroelectric power, water distribution, and strategic control over the Mojave, making it the focal point of military campaigns, political negotiation, and territorial disputes between the NCR and Caesar's Legion, while also attracting independent actors such as Mr. House and various mercenary groups, highlighting the interplay between resource control and political dominance. Trade and supply lines, such as those running through Mojave Outpost, Camp McCarran, and the NCR-controlled railways, serve as critical logistical networks that determine the reach and stability of NCR governance, while Caesar's Legion relies on forced tribute, raiding, and strategic occupation to maintain its influence, illustrating differing approaches to territorial control, economic sustainability, and population management in a post-war environment. Local settlements, including Primm, Good Springs, and Novak, become arenas for political contestation, recruitment, and social engineering, as both factions seek allies, spies, and cooperative communities to strengthen their respective positions, with the courier acting as a pivotal agent capable of influencing allegiances, strategic outcomes, and the moral trajectory of Mojave politics. Raiders, independent militias, and minor factions further complicate the political landscape, exploiting the competition between NCR and Caesar's Legion to gain autonomy, resources, or protection, illustrating the multi-layered dynamics of governance, survival, and negotiation in regions where authority is contested, enforcement is variable, and loyalty is fluid. Ideological propaganda, from NCR recruitment speeches to Caesar's Legion's ritualistic ceremonies and public displays of power, plays a significant role in consolidating support, intimidating adversaries, and shaping cultural perceptions, highlighting how belief systems, military doctrine, and political messaging intertwine to influence both human behavior and the outcome of regional conflicts. Strategic decision-making, including the control of key choke points, alliances with mercenary groups, and the management of internal factional disputes, directly impacts the potential for stability or chaos in the Mojave, emphasizing the necessity of diplomacy, military strength, and ethical calculation in post-war leadership, as exemplified by player interactions, factional quests, and major narrative outcomes in Fallout New Vegas. Finally, the struggle between NCR, Caesar's Legion, and independent actors encapsulates the broader themes of governance, morality, and survival in the Fallout universe, illustrating that political authority in the post-apocalyptic world is contingent, contested, and deeply intertwined with ideology, resource management, and human agency, and that the Mojave wasteland provides a concentrated lens through which the challenges, complexities, and consequences of factional politics are explored across the Fallout series. The regions of Boston and Appalachia, as depicted in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, provide rich case studies in post-war adaptation, settlement development, and regional identity, illustrating how geography, pre-war infrastructure, and cultural memory shape human survival and social organization in the wasteland, with Boston, built upon the historic city of Massachusetts, serving as a hub of historical continuity and technological conflict, where surviving buildings, Fenway Park, and pre-war institutions were repurposed into fortified settlements like Diamond City and the Institute, blending remnants of urban culture with emergent post-war governance structures, while also reflecting the tension between tradition, technological control, and human resilience. Appalachia, corresponding to West Virginia and depicted in Fallout 76, illustrates an earlier stage of post-war societal development, where communities emerging from Vault-76 confront extreme radiation, mutated wildlife, and environmental hazards. With settlements such as Flatwoods, Charleston, and Morgantown evolving as centers of commerce, governance, and survival, highlighting the importance of resource distribution, defensive positioning, and cooperative infrastructure in shaping regional stability. Pre-war infrastructure, including roads, railways, power plants, and military installations, profoundly influenced the location and growth of settlements, with factions and communities leveraging existing structures to maintain communication, generate power, and facilitate trade, demonstrating that geography and historical assets remain decisive factors even decades after the Great War. The Brotherhood of Steel established a significant presence in both regions, with missions to secure technology, recover pre-war artifacts, and eliminate perceived threats, such as synths in Boston or uncontrolled robotics in Appalachia, demonstrating how regional operations reflect broader factional priorities and the influence of ideology on localized governance. The Institute, hidden beneath the Commonwealth, represents the persistence of pre-war scientific authority, maintaining sophisticated infrastructure, synthetic human production, and advanced research laboratories, while interacting with regional settlements through espionage, manipulation, and technological control, highlighting the tension between secrecy, power, and ethical responsibility in shaping regional history. Settler communities, including the Minutemen in the Commonwealth and emergent towns in Appalachia, illustrate grassroots governance, collective defense, and social cohesion, relying on volunteer militias, local resource management, and adaptive strategies to counter threats from raiders, mutated creatures, and environmental hazards, emphasizing the human capacity to rebuild and organize in fragmented landscapes. Raiders, tribal collectives, and opportunistic factions further complicate regional histories, disrupting trade, destabilizing settlements, and provoking conflict, while also serving as catalysts for political alliances and defensive innovation, illustrating the ongoing struggle between anarchy and order in post-war societies. Resource scarcity, environmental hazards, and localized threats shaped economic systems, social hierarchies, and survival strategies, with water purification, food cultivation, and salvage operations forming the backbone of regional stability, while factional control over these resources often determined the outcome of political and military conflicts, as demonstrated in both Boston and Appalachia. Cultural memory and pre-war heritage influenced settlement identity, with communities preserving architectural landmarks, historical rituals, and local traditions, as seen in Diamond City's baseball-themed architecture, or Appalachia's town planning around pre-war infrastructure, reflecting humanity's enduring desire to maintain continuity and narrative meaning despite catastrophic disruption. Finally, the histories of Boston and Appalachia underscore the interplay between geography, technology, ideology, and human agency, illustrating that regional development in the Fallout universe is neither linear nor uniform, but shaped by complex interactions among environmental constraints, factional ambitions, and adaptive strategies, and that these regional narratives provide critical context for understanding factional politics, settlement dynamics, and survival strategies. Robots and artificial intelligence represent one of the most enduring legacies of pre-war technological ambition in the Fallout universe, shaping both the post-apocalyptic environment and the socio-political dynamics of human factions, and understanding their evolution reveals the intersection of innovation, control, and unintended consequences in the wasteland. Early domestic and industrial robots, such as Mr. Handy, Mr. Gutsy, and Protectrons, were designed by companies like Robco Industries and General Atomics International to perform labor, maintenance, and security functions, demonstrating the pre-war reliance on automation to enhance productivity and safety, while inadvertently creating autonomous systems that would continue operating long after human oversight diminished. Securitrons, introduced prominently in Fallout: New Vegas, exemplify the integration of artificial intelligence into security, law enforcement, and urban control, particularly under the direction of Mr. House, whose programming ensured loyalty, obedience, and strategic efficiency, transforming the city of New Vegas into a technologically fortified stronghold, while demonstrating the potential for AI to centralize power in the absence of traditional governance. Liberty Prime, a towering pre-war military robot, was designed for ideological warfare, equipped with nuclear capabilities and programmed with anti-communist directives, and later reactivated by the Brotherhood of Steel to serve as both a weapon of mass destruction and a symbol of technological supremacy, illustrating the dual use of AI as both combat instrument and propagandistic icon. Robotic factions and independent AI entities often developed unintended behaviors in the post-war landscape, with malfunctioning, protectrons, rogue securitrons, and automated defense systems sometimes turning hostile, highlighting the fragility of artificial oversight and the ethical considerations of autonomous machines interacting with humans in an irradiated environment. The integration of AI into factional strategy is evident in the Brotherhood of Steel's use of robots for defense, patrol, and salvage missions, emphasizing how technological expertise, combined with access to pre-war infrastructure, can shape post-war power structures and influence territorial control. Advanced AI, such as that controlling Mr. House's network, demonstrates sophisticated decision-making, logistical coordination, and predictive modeling, allowing a single intelligent system to manage resources, security, and economic activity at scales that human factions could scarcely achieve, revealing the transformative potential of AI in post-apocalyptic governance. Robots also interact with human society in more subtle ways, providing companionship, labor, and guidance, as seen with Mr. Handy units in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, illustrating how artificial intelligence can be integrated into daily life, cultural continuity, and moral decision-making, blurring the lines between tool, servant, and semi-autonomous agent. Experimental and militarized robotics programs, including the creation of mobile artillery platforms, automated war machines, and AI-driven surveillance networks, reflect pre-war ambitions to control both domestic and battlefield environments, while their post-war remnants continue to influence factional conflict, settlement security, and wasteland exploration across multiple regions. Rogue AI, such as malfunctioning securitrons or independent robotic units, underscore the unpredictable consequences of sophisticated autonomous systems when removed from human supervision, generating threats, alliances, or emergent behaviors that shape local power dynamics and survival strategies. Finally, The presence of robots and AI in the Fallout universe illustrates a persistent narrative theme: the interplay between human ambition, technological innovation, and ethical responsibility, revealing that artificial intelligence is both a tool of civilization and a reminder of the hubris that contributed to the world's collapse, and that the control, adaptation, or mismanagement of these systems continues to define life, conflict, and morality in the irradiated wasteland. The Fallout universe is rife with clandestine experiments and mysterious projects that exemplify humanity's ambition, hubris, and ethical compromise in the pursuit of power, control, and survival, with these endeavors shaping the mutated ecosystems, technological landscapes, and factional conflicts that define the post-apocalyptic world. The Forced Evolutionary Virus (FEV) program, one of the most infamous pre-war projects, was designed to enhance human strength, resilience, and longevity, ultimately producing supermutants in Vault-87 and other test sites, illustrating both the potential and the unintended consequences of genetic manipulation. The Glow, the irradiated epicenter of FEV research in California, became a dangerous environmental and ecological anomaly, with extreme radiation, mutated fauna, and hostile conditions, serving as both a testing ground and a warning of the perils of scientific overreach, influencing survivor strategies and factional policies in surrounding regions. Vault-Tec's secret experiments, conducted in various vaults such as Vault-11, Vault-87, and Vault-101, explored social engineering, psychological manipulation, and survival stress under controlled yet extreme conditions, demonstrating the pre-war government's willingness to prioritize research over ethical responsibility, while leaving long-term consequences for Vault dwellers across the wasteland. The Enclave continued pre-war experimentation with genetic purity, synthetic humans, and FEV-modified soldiers, attempting to engineer a post-war society under centralized control, while their clandestine laboratories, offshore oil rigs, and military facilities became sources of technological artifacts, ethical dilemmas, and narrative conflict in Fallout 2, 3, and 76. Advanced robotics experiments, including Mr. Handy, Securitron, and autonomous military AI programs, illustrate the convergence of artificial intelligence, automation, and human oversight, while rogue AI, such as malfunctioning Securitrons or independent robotic systems, demonstrate the unpredictable outcomes of removing complex machines from their intended parameters. Project Purity, the water purification initiative in Fallout 3, was both a scientific and socio-political endeavor aimed at restoring potable water to the capital wasteland, highlighting how experimental technologies could serve humanitarian goals, while remaining vulnerable to factional exploitation, environmental hazards, and human sabotage. The Institute's covert synth production, human replacement programs, and advanced scientific research in Fallout 4 reveal ongoing secret projects that manipulate human populations, explore consciousness replication, and create technologically superior agents, demonstrating the continuation of pre-war experimentation under the guise of progress and security. Experiments in radiation-based weapons and chemical agents, including nuclear missile guidance systems, mutagenic payloads, and chem enhancements, contributed to both the Great War's devastation and post-war ecological hazards, leaving a legacy of environmental and biological risks that survivors must navigate. Archaeological and hidden research sites, such as pre-war laboratories, underground bunkers, and abandoned Vault-Tec complexes contain cryptic data, holotapes, and prototypes that provide insight into lost knowledge, unresolved mysteries, and the ethical limits of science, inviting exploration while presenting hazards and moral choices for wasteland adventurers. Finally, these secret experiments and projects collectively demonstrate that the Fallout universe is shaped not only by visible factions, cities, and conflicts, but also by hidden histories of scientific ambition, moral compromise, and human curiosity, and that uncovering, understanding, or surviving the consequences of these initiatives remains central to the post-apocalyptic narrative, emphasizing that the mysteries of the past continue to influence, threaten, and define life in the irradiated wasteland.